and now. It's time to become motivated and inspired as we are privileged to have one of America's top speakers here with us tonight, Mr. Patrick Grady. Mr. Grady is from Wahoo, Florida, and has traveled the country speaking to thousands of students and educators. He's a former career and technical student educator, has one wonderful wife, 3 beautiful children, 4 hogs, 3 dogs, and 7 chickens. He recently graduated high school, recently learned to read, and recently got his ankle monitor removed. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for Mr. Patrick Grady.
Yeah, baby. There you go. Let's hear it for Jackson and your incredible state officer team. They're doing a great job. As you heard Jackson say, my name is Patrick Grady and I actually live in Wahoo, Florida. So one time everybody say, Wahoo! That's pretty impressive. Some of you have no idea where that is. I've got some friends here. That is in Sumter County, Florida, about an hour and 30 minutes from here. Anybody that's ever heard me do a presentation know I like to start things off on what I call a very positive note. So I'd like you to turn to the person on each side of you and say, you are the best looking person I have ever seen. That's good. Now if you would, I'd like you to turn back to those same people and say, I was just joking. We want to have some fun because this is the kickoff of probably one of the greatest state leadership conferences in the nation with Florida HOSA. And I got to tell you, the roots for me in Florida HOSA go back many, many years. In 1978, before most of you were even born, I was invited to speak as an 11th grader at the very first Florida HOSA state conference that was held in Citrus County. So my roots run deep, and my mother, at the age of 65, was a HOSA member. And we're proud of that. But I think the greatest thing is to see what I call ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things with their lives. By show of hands, how many of you can remember being in the 8th grade? Yes, when I was in the 8th grade, I had an incredible teacher who taught English, and her name was Miss Connors. Miss Connors had a job that we had to do, a task in class. Something that probably everyone in here, from the back to the front, from the left to the right. That was, we had to go to the library and check out a book. If you've had to do that, raise your hand. Yes. Not only we have to check out the book, we were then required to read the book. And then we had to sit down and write a book report. If you've done that, put 2 hands in the air. But Miss Connor took it an additional step. That step was we as 8th grade students didn't just write that book report. We had to stand behind a small podium she had placed in the classroom and deliver that book report as a speech. Now I'll tell you, as an 8th grade student, I was terrified. But I said, I'd love to hear about ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things in their lives. The story I read was about a lady by the name of Wilma Rudolph. For those that are not familiar with her story, please give me a moment to simply share it. Wilma Rudolph was born premature at only 4½ pounds on a small farm in the backwoods of Tennessee. When Wilma was 4 years old, she became very ill. She contracted double pneumonia, scarlet fever, and a terrible, dreaded disease called polio. And the combination of those illnesses left Wilma with a paralyzed and useless left leg. The doctors and nurses used to tell Wilma's family, she will never walk. Her mother would just say and sing the line from a favorite song that they sang in her church. She would say that Wilma could climb her highest mountain if only she would take one step at a time. But the individuals that worked with Wilma were very amazing and incredible healthcare professionals like those of you in this room. And they worked so hard with her that eventually they developed and built a steel brace that they strapped and buckled to her left leg. Now you would think that once they did that Wilma would simply stand up and start walking. It didn't come that easily. It actually took Wilma 5 torturous years. 5 years to learn to walk with that steel brace on her leg. When she was 9 years old, she went to a doctor's appointment, sat down in the very same chair, in the very same room. While the doctors and the nurses were discussing her future and her prognosis with her family, they heard a noise. When they turned and looked, it was Wilma, who as a 9-year-old child had reached down and unbuckled that steel brace and simply dropped it to the floor. Then with no assistance, no help whatsoever, she stood up and she took one solitary step without the brace on her leg. Because of healthcare professionals. At the age of 13, 3 things happened to Wilma. First, she entered a Tennessee high school. Second, she joined the track team. And third, she assumed the nickname Limpy Rudolph. And the reason they called her Limpy is because she would actually limp into last place in every single event. But after each bitter loss, she would shout above the laughter of her teammates and her friends. And she would tell them, I will never give up. I'll promise you I will never, ever quit trying. Finally, one day, Wilma did win a race. Now with a feel of victory in her heart, she began to run with a wild determination and a reckless abandon. Until one day, she not only won a single race, but she won every single race she entered in the entire track meet. And on that particular day, her teammates and her friends decided they would change her nickname, not from keeping it Limpy. They chose Lightning Rudolph because of her lightning fast speed. Wilma's senior year in high school, she's at a track meet. She and her teammates have run their events. They're sitting around talking like you are in competition. Here in HOSA, they're talking about going on to the district, maybe the regionals, maybe even the state finals. And as they were sitting visiting, a gentleman eased his way out of the field, onto the field, and he came up to Wilma. He said, excuse me, are you Wilma Rudolph? As the story goes, she stood, extended her hand, and said, yes, I am. The man said, Wilma, you don't know me. My name is Ed Temple. I'm the track coach at Tennessee State University. Wilma, I want you to come to my college. I'd like you to run track for me. They said the smile that was on Wilma's face quickly just disappeared. And she said, thank you, Coach, but I'm sorry, I can't. Coach Temple said, Wilma, I don't understand. Why can't you come to my school? Why can't you run track for me? She went on to explain to Coach Temple the reason. She said, Coach, my parents never graduated from high school. I'll be the first one to get a high school diploma. So we've talked about college, we've dreamed about college, but we simply don't have the money. We can't afford it. Said Coach Temple smiled and said, Wilma, you don't understand. You're a very good student. Wilma didn't make straight A's, but she took her studies very seriously. He said, you're an amazing athlete. If you will come to my college, if you'll be part of my team, I'm prepared to give you a full scholarship. Just please be part of my team. That evening she went home. She sat with her family and told them about the opportunity she's been given. They said, go for it, Wilma. A couple weeks later, Coach Temple comes to Wilma's school, and with him he brings a letter of intent. How many of you, by show of hands, have ever heard of a letter of commitment or a letter of intent? For those of you that are not familiar with it, it is basically a contract between the athlete, the scholar, the medical professional. And what they do is they decide what they're going to do. For example, the college will say, we're going to give you room, tuition, we're going to provide your food. But you, on the other hand, as the academic scholar, as the athlete, whatever your talent is, you're going to represent our college, our university, our trade school. You're going to show up for practice, you're going to make the grade, you're going to uphold the high standards of our college, just as you do with HOSA. And it's not just a verbal commitment. They sit and they sign that letter of agreement. She did that. Summer comes. She graduates from high school. How many of you in here are ready to graduate? That's right. She graduates from high school. Summer comes along and fall eventually gets there. And for the first time in young Wilma's life, she's going away to a college she had only seen pictures of in a magazine. Because it was a different day and age. When Wilma was young, there wasn't the internet. Only the wealthiest of the wealthy had televisions in their home. The only phone in their community was located at a corner store. So Wilma is again going away to a college she had only seen pictures of. She goes into her bedroom and she gathers her meager belongings. She heads away to school. When I say meager belongings, she had very little, almost nothing. Sometimes we focus on what we don't have instead of what we do. I don't know what challenges you encounter in your life. I know what I have faced, what some of my family members have faced, the challenges and the obstacles we have to overcome. When I say Wilma Rudolph had very little, she was one of 22 children in her family. A simple meal on the table on any given day was success for the Rudolph family. She goes away, things start changing for her. How do they change? Her wonderful teachers and advisors from school, like those that have accompanied you here to Orlando, they weren't there every day. She now had to motivate herself. She had to get up, get to class, do her schoolwork, go to practice. Things started changing, and as we get a little age on us, as we finish middle school, high school, go on to trade school, universities, into our career, the working world, maybe the military. Some of you will become firefighters, paramedics. But we take on more responsibility. Wilma did that. But Wilma worked so hard that in 1960, Wilma Rudolph earned the right. She didn't get her name drawn out of a hat. She was not a lucky lottery number winner. She worked and earned the right to represent the United States of America in the International Olympics in Rome. You've seen, many of you have seen the Olympic Games on television. In 1960, the games are almost identical to what they are today. The technology has changed, the television coverage has changed, but the events themselves almost the same. So imagine, if you will, an Olympic stadium filled with thousands of people from around the world gathered to watch the athletes from their nations, from their countries compete. On the field are athletes, some are running, they're starting to warm themselves up physically. There are others that, like some of you, were preparing themselves mentally. They were envisioning what it would be like to go into that HOSA competition, to go in and do the best job that you can possibly do, to take all the training and the practice you have prepared for this conference and put it into use. The athletes were the same. But of all the athletes on the field that year, the one that was of greatest interest to everybody was Wilma Rudolph. Why? First and foremost, she was an unknown black athlete. Second, something was obviously wrong with her left leg, because everywhere she walked with a limp. People were asking questions out loud. What's she doing here? Man, what's the United States trying to prove? She can't even walk. She's limping. Apparently she's injured. How is she going to run these races? You know what? The games are over for the USA and they haven't even begun. But they discovered very quickly what Wilma Rudolph was doing in that Olympic stadium that particular year. Because when the starting pistol cracked, Wilma tore down that cinder path in a world record 7 seconds, and she captured her first Olympic gold medal. Her second event is the 200-meter dash. This time she was competing against a girl from Germany that held the world record. Her name was Jette Haney. Girl from Germany held the world record. She was favored to win, but Jette had never raced Wilma Rudolph. Again, the runners lined up. The starting pistol cracked. Wilma and Jette jumped to the lead, turning the race into a fighting duel. But with a burst of speed on the backstretch, Wilma snapped the tape. and captured her second gold medal. A few days later, Wilma's competing one final time. The event this time is the 400-meter relay. She's competing against a German team who is again favored to win. Anchoring the German team, running last for them, was a revenge-seeking Jette Haney who had vowed that she would not lose another race to Wilma. Anchoring the American team is Wilma. The runners lined up, the starting pistol cracked. The Germans and the Americans jumped to the lead, turning the race into a fighting duel. The first runners handed the baton to the second. The second runners handed the baton to the third. And when the third runners handed the batons to Wilma and Jette, Wilma Rudolph dropped hers. And Jette Haney, the girl from Germany, raced all alone toward the finish line. Wilma's Olympic dream was over. Her thrill of victory was simply through. But she never in her life gave up. Less than 100 meters from the finish line, Wilma reached down and she grabbed up that baton in one hand. And what Olympic records have come to call a miracle today, she pulled up next to Germany's Jette Haney to race neck for neck, stride for stride. 90 meters ago, 80 meters ago, 70 meters, 100,000 people were on their feet yelling wildly because they knew they weren't just watching another race. They were witnessing a miracle. 20 meters ago, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the tape snapped. And Wilma Rudolph won. She captured her third Olympic gold medal, the first American woman in the history of those events to have ever done so. But how easy, how simple would it have been for Wilma as a young child to have listened to some of the people in her community that said, Wilma, you will never walk, you will never run, and you will never play with your friends. And she could have simply given up. But she never looked at herself as a victim, only as a victor. And throughout the remainder of her life, she traveled throughout the entire world, inspiring and motivating other people. So what I will tell you is this. There will be people in your life that will tell you you cannot accomplish your goals and your dreams. And if you listen to those voices of pessimism and simply stop, you won't reach them. But you are part of one of the greatest youth organizations, and I will tell you, in the world, providing you with opportunity to learn things in middle school and high school that will benefit you not only today but throughout life. But you got to be willing to step up. You got to be willing to get involved. Now, I'm speaking to the choir because I'm watching you with your flashing lights going on, and I can hear your enthusiasm. So we're going to do something right now. The state officers had no idea I'm going to do this. They're going to join me on stage. They're going to help me with a little activity. Give them a hand. Here they come. Your executive council, your executive team coming to the front. Now, here's what we're going to do. They have no clue. Once we get this started, I'm going to kind of go like this. That's my signal for you to go off the stage and circulate throughout the audience. Because I have a little rule. That rule is if you don't do this out there, you got to do it up here. So if you see any HOSA members or anyone sitting with their arms crossed like this, not participating, bring them to the front so we can all enjoy their show, all right? But that also goes for advisors as well. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody on your feet. We're going to make some noise. And again, we're watching you. You're going to put your hands in the air like this. The little song we're going to sing together goes, sing la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah. You got that? If you mess up, we're Jackson. Jackson, if you mess up, just remember la 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 la. You'll do okay, all right? Then after that chorus, I'm going to give you instructions on what to do. You'll pick it up real quick. Participate. But once we get started, I'm going to do this. State officers, again, circulate to the audience. Hands in the air. Sing. Let me hear you sing. La 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 hallelujah. La 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 hallelujah. La 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 hallelujah. La 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 hallelujah. Shake a friend's hand, shake a hand next to you. Shake a friend's hand, shake another one too. Shake a friend's hand, shake a hand behind you. Shake a friend's hand, shake a hand next to you. Sing la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah. High five a friend next to you. High five a friend, five another one too. High five a friend next to you. High five a friend next to you. Sing la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah. Bump a friend's rump, bump a rump next to you. Bump a friend's rump, bump another one too. Bump a friend's rump, bump a rump next to you. Bump a friend's rump, bump a rump next to you. Sing la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah, la 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 hallelujah. Pick a friend's nose, pick a nose next to you. No, don't do that. Some of you are like, hold still. No, don't. This will only work. This next part. Everybody look at me. We got to do this 100% together. On the count of three. On the count of three. Turn around and shake hands with the person right behind you. 1, 2, 3, go! I love this job. You can sit down now, y'all. How many of you would say, dude, that was just wrong? That was wrong. Some of you are kind of like me. All at the same time, you turn around, everybody's facing the back of the room. Some of us, we tried to be cool. We went like this. I didn't do it. But then there's some of you, it took a second for you to catch on. I can see it from up here. Any of you notice this? 1, 2, 3, go. I can't believe we did that. That's so funny. And you know what? It's funny. And sometimes it's okay to laugh. I will tell you, the friends that I have that are in the medical industry, medical care, most every one of them has a sense of humor. And I'm in no shape, manner, or form saying that we should laugh at people, but I think we need to find humor because it's one of the greatest gifts we have. How many of you, by show of hands, do like to laugh? Creates a sense of joy. There was an actress back in the 40s and 50s. Her name was Toady Fields. Toady, as an actress and comedian, had almost a worldwide following. But Toady had challenges in her life. She suffered from obesity. She had an autoimmune disease that helped her be more susceptible to other illnesses more easily. She suffered from diabetes, severe diabetes, that caused gangrene in her leg, and they were rolling her into surgery. And she looked up at the doctors and the nurses, and they said, the doctors and nurses were so concerned about having to amputate her leg. She said simply this: we were given 2 legs and 1 sense of humor. Better to lose a leg. And that's pretty deep. But find the joy in having friends here in HOSA that are working towards some of the same goals and objectives. How many of you in here have strange friends? How many of you have strange friends that are with you? Look at Jackson, they're pointing at each other, right? I told Mr. Gear I would tell this story. I'm going to share with you about some strange friends I have. And I will tell you this, some of you may know some of these people. Out on Highway 50 in a town called Fort Christmas, 2 friends of mine own a gator farm. Their names are Shane and Ho-Ho Brooks. And growing up with them, we used to have some great times, but at the Gator Farm, what they did was this. Back before Disney World, Epcot, SeaWorld, and some of these theme parks, the American alligator, that reptile, was one of the most popular tourist attractions in the state of Florida. So people would come around, ride on airboats. They go to the lakes and swamps to look at alligators. The challenge, though, was this. They had been overhunted to the point that they were on the endangered species list. So Shane and Ho-Ho's dad, Herman Brooks, along with a gentleman from Sumter County by the name of Scrammy Hunt, decided they'd do something about it. They started trying to raise alligators in captivity. Their idea was that when they got big enough to take care of themselves, they would turn them loose in lakes and ponds throughout the state, and they'd repopulate, come off the endangered species list. People told him, "You're crazy, you can't do that. It will not work." And there will be people in your life, and you may say, "I'm going to find a cure for cancer," and they may tell you, "You cannot do that. Go out and prove them wrong." So I'm 18 years old. I'm at Brooks Brothers. Back then it was called the Brooks Family Gator Farm. Some of you have seen it on Highway 50. I'm there. I'm 18 years old. Shane and Ho-Ho said, "We're glad you're here." And we walked through the park they had. And then we walked over this bridge. And under the bridge are alligators of all different sizes. And then they said, "We need your help." So what are we going to do? They said, "We're going to collect the alligator eggs." Anybody in here ever collect chicken eggs? I'm thinking it's the same thing. It's not. I said, "How do we do this?" And they said, "It's pretty simple. The American alligator is a reptile. What the female alligator does is dig a hole in the ground. She lays her eggs in that hole. She then covers that hole with dirt and debris. She will lay next to that nest for weeks and weeks and weeks, going without food and water to protect those eggs from any predators. And then what she will do is this. Once those baby alligators hatch, in many cases, she will take them in her mouth and bring them out into the lake or pond and protect them until they're big enough to protect themselves." But they said, "Today we got to collect gator eggs." I said, "How do we do it?" Shane says, "We need 3 people. I said, "I'm helping. What are we doing?" Shane says, "First of all, Ho-Ho's going to dig out the nest, grab the eggs. Ho-Ho will hand me the eggs. I'll put them in a bucket. We will then take them and put them in the incubator. Once they hatch, we'll move them into the nursery under a heat lamp." I said, "What's my job?" Ho-Ho says, "I got you." He hands me the branch off of a palm tree. And he said, "Patrick, you are the whopper." And I said, "What is the whopper?" He said, "We've got to get her off the nest. What you're going to do is take this palm branch. You're going to whop her on the head. Then you turn around and you run. She chases you so we can dig out the nest and get the eggs." Right. How many of you know this? How many of you know an American alligator on dry land can outrun a human being for a short period of space? American alligator on dry land, if they get the jump on it, can outrun a thoroughbred horse for about 18 to 20 feet. I said, "What if she gets me?" They said, "She won't." I said, "But what if?" And they said, "Here's what you need to do. Climb that tree." I look over. Beautifully manicured tree, lowest branch on that tree is like 10 feet off the ground. I don't know about you, but a mad alligator's chasing me, I can climb that tree. My concern, though, is this. I'm at the top of the tree. She's at the bottom. Her nest has just been robbed. Who does she think did it? Me. Me, and she can go weeks and weeks and weeks without food. The challenge is this, and we have to think about this in life. In that situation, I have little or no control. And the challenge is this. We've got to take control of our future through our choices and decisions. You're proving that by being here. We've got to overcome obstacles. The obstacle for me was, how do I get away from her? Ho-Ho then said this, "Patrick, when you whop her with that branch, do not run fast straight ahead." I said, "Why is that?" They said, "Because she can run fast because her body is long and lean. She'll catch you. But if you zigzag from side to side, she won't." I remember being absolutely terrified. I'm going up to this female alligator. She's 8.5, 9 feet long. Her mouth is open and she's hissing at me. The only thing I have between life and death is the branch off of a palm tree. Shane and Ho-Ho are hiding behind a big live oak tree going, "Go, dude, go." I finally get nerve, walk up, and I whop her on the head, and I'm shucking, jiving, moving, grooving, and I got away. Shane yelled out, "Dude, what if you'd have tripped?" I hadn't thought about that. But fortunately, I got away. But that means that sometimes we face obstacles, and what we have to do is say, okay, again, are we going to give in to them? Or are we going to do whatever is necessary to go around them, through them, beside them, through our choices, decisions, education, but also with the support of one another? A number of years ago, I'll wrap it up with this. I was at the Rosen Center Hotel on International Drive. Orange County Public Schools had brought in more than 4,000 students from Osceola County, Seminole County, several other counties in the area. They brought in 4,000 middle school and high school students just like yourself. And what they were doing is they had me open it with a presentation, but then they were taking students just like you and they were setting you into workshops. And they were talking about the challenges we face in our school system and asking young people like yourselves to help come up with the solutions to those challenges. I'm sitting at the very end of the table. There was one podium on the stage. They had a young lady come out. Her name was Christy. Christy's job was to sing the national anthem. How many of you enjoyed Grace this evening when she sang the national anthem? So Christy's job is to sing the national anthem in front of 4,000 students, most of whom she did not know. And I could tell from where I was sitting that when Christy walked up, she was nervous. There was a microphone on a stand and she adjusted the mic. I was waiting for some music to start to play, maybe a recording. Maybe someone's going to play a keyboard. It didn't happen. I discovered very quickly Christy was going to sing the national anthem a cappella, no musical accompaniment whatsoever. And I could tell again she was nervous just by her posture and her demeanor. And she looked at the audience and she sang, "Oh, say, can you see?" And then she stopped. She had forgotten the words to the national anthem. I'm sitting thinking, what's going to happen? How are these students going to react? There are a few students that laughed a little bit. That's natural. But they sat quietly just as you're doing. Second time Christy comes up, she kind of clears her throat and she goes, "Oh, say, can you see over the ramparts glass gleaming?" And again she stopped. And I thought certainly these students that did not know her, these middle school and high school students, are going to start laughing, pointing fingers, but they didn't. What was very cool to me is suddenly there were some students that started putting their hands together. And they started clapping a little bit louder and louder. A third time, Christy steps up to the podium. At this point, from the end of the table, I could see that she had tears in her eyes. As best she could, she looked into the audience, cleared her throat, and she sang, "Oh, say, can you see? And the rocket's red glare." And the third time she stopped. Not thought certainly she's going to leave the stage. I thought she's going to give up. She's forgotten the words of the national anthem not once, not twice, but 3 times. I'm thinking, what would I do? In front of 4,000 people I didn't know, I'd have probably hit the door so quick you would have went, "Was there somebody just up there on the stage?" But Christy did not turn. She did not run. The students at that conference, they didn't laugh. They didn't point fingers. Instead, one more time, they started putting their hands together and they clapped louder and louder. A 4th time, Christy stepped up. Now her hands were shaking so much that you could hear her class ring rattling on the microphone. The tears that were in her eyes were no longer there. Why? Because they were streaming down her cheeks and they were dripping onto the podium. And then, as best she could, she cleared her throat, she looked at the audience and she sang, "Oh, say, can you see?" And 4,000 young people stood up on their feet. They raised their voices to the sky and they sang it along with her. And I've never been more proud of a group of young people in my life. Why? Because what was probably the deepest, darkest moment of young Chrissy's life, instead of laughing, instead of pointing fingers, they chose to lift her up. You are future health professionals. And the way you interact with people, the way you support people, your attitude toward your patients, whether you're working toward them directly or not, will in many cases influence their attitudes and their recovery. If you've not watched it, there's a movie called Patch Adams. And he talks about in that movie putting some humor back in healthcare, but treating not the symptoms, but treating the patient. In a number of years, some of you will go back to your high school reunions. And there will be people at your high school reunions or at a point in your life that will come up and go, "I remember you. I remember we were in the same class." Maybe you didn't hang out with them, but they may say something like this to you. They may look at you and go, "You know what, I remember you from middle school. I remember you from high school. And I will never forget what you did to me. I'll never forget what you did to me." Or because of your attitude and how you treat other people, how you interact with other people, maybe they'll come up and you did something simple, something little that helped them at a very difficult time, and you may not have even realized it, and they come up to you and say, "I remember you from school. I'll never forget what you did for me." Here the difference, did to me or did for me, and it's based upon the choice of how we choose to treat other people. We're going to do this real quick. We're going to make some noise one more time. You're going to put your hands up, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, "Florida HOSA, let me feel your power." All together, we're going to clap 5 times quickly and stop. Go. 5 times again. That's good. 3 times. 3 times. 1 time. 1 time. Then you're going to stand up and you're going to yell, "HOSA rocks!" Okay. Shh. Now, we got to make the roof rattle because you're teenagers and you know it's not a good time until security shows up. And it's not a great time until security shows up the second time. So we're going to make some noise in here. Are you ready? So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to say, "Florida HOSA, let me feel your power." 5 times, 5 times, 3 times, 3 times, 1 time, 1 time. HOSA rocks. Here we go. Hands up. Florida HOSA. We got to do it together. Florida HOSA. You got to let me say, "Let me feel your power." Am I going too fast for you people? I am. Okay, listen. I don't do this often. I'm going to slow the instructions down. Try to keep up. I'm going to say, "Florida HOSA, let me feel your power." 5 times. 5 times. 3 times. 3 times. 1 time. 1 time. HOSA rocks. You think you got it? Here we go. Hands up. Get ready. Florida HOSA. Oh, behave. Here we go. Florida HOSA, let me feel your power. HOSA, you rock. And I will say this. You helped me get my career started. Florida HOSA, I will never forget what you did for me. Make it rock.